Hello, and welcome to Everyday Simple Somatics, a podcast dedicated to helping you find healing through your body's natural wisdom. I'm your host, Dr. Christine Baker. Today, we are going to be talking all about this incredibly important concept of the window of tolerance. This is maybe some insider language in the mental health and somatic and nervous system world that I just want to let you in on. You can become an insider through listening to this podcast today. I do want to let you know that I am going to have quite a bit of visuals in today's podcast episode. So today may be a good day to watch this on YouTube. I'm going to try and describe it as much as I can for podcast listeners, but maybe a good YouTube day, just throwing it out there. So window of tolerance, general introduction is that this is a concept that helps us understand where we are at in terms of our own regulation. And this really matters for everyday life because if we can get a good idea of what our window looks like and when we're starting to get out of it on the top or on the bottom, and I'm going to explain what all of this means, then we can start to offer ourselves the skills that we need to go back into our window. Okay. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Christine Baker. I have been a trauma therapist for over 13 years. I'm also a somatic experiencing practitioner, which ultimately just means that I'm incredibly passionate about helping people understand that trauma is stored in our bodies. And that means that our bodies, physical bodies, have to be involved in the healing from trauma journey. And so hence this podcast. That is what this podcast is all about, giving you practical ways to bring your body alongside you in your mental health journey. Okay. Typically, this podcast will be a weekly release. It'll be 10-ish minutes, giving you a specific somatic practice for a specific mental health need or relational need. However, currently, this episode is a part of a 10-day series that I'm calling Essential Foundations. I really just want to make sure that everyone, like I said, does have some insider language, does understand the basics of the nervous system before we get into offering you those practical skills. So if this sounds like something you're interested in, I hope that you'll consider liking and subscribing to this podcast wherever you are watching or listening to it so that you don't miss future episodes, and all of those little clicks and comments and things really do help other people who need these resources find them. Okay, so let's jump into our material for today, the window of tolerance. I want to show you an image of the window of tolerance. And so this PDF is actually going to be in the show notes so that you can access it and use it as a part of your own curiosity around your own nervous system. But you can see here, there is in the middle, the green, this optimal zone of arousal. This is our window of tolerance. Okay. So I'm actually going to use my little whiteboard because this is how I always explain this concept. And it's just helpful for me to write it out as we are talking through it. So here is your window of tolerance. Ultimately, this just means this is where you're comfortable. So to use some of the insider language I've already taught you guys in previous episodes, this would be your ventral vagal system. It would also be more parasympathetic nervous system. So this is where we're comfortable. This is where we feel like we can handle things. We don't feel overwhelmed. We have that flexibility that I talked about between activation and rest. This is like our comfort zone. Okay. Green means go, right? And remember too, I talked about our nervous system regulation is all about this flexibility between activation and rest. And I even described it as we want gentle rolling hills. Okay. So a regulated nervous system looks like this, gentle rolling hills. When we have experienced a lot of trauma or chronic stress, our nervous system is going to look a lot more like this. Not so gentle anymore, right? And so for those podcast listeners, I drew a a line that goes up above the top line, hangs out there for a while, and then has a dramatic drop into below the lower line. Okay. So let me tell you what an example of this would be. So if someone cuts me off in traffic, I know I used that example last podcast, and I have a sympathetic response, right? So I, grip the wheel, brace for impact, and all of my senses become very on and aware because I've got to protect myself, right? Like this is all good. This is what our sympathetic nervous system is for. And then I realize if I'm a pretty regulated person, okay, I didn't get hit. Now I can listen to my podcast and calm back down and settle. There's my gentle rolling hill. For people that are more chronic stress and trauma survivors, once they have that sympathetic spike from being cut off in traffic, they just keep on going up, right? And so it's like, oh my gosh, people in Birmingham can't drive. Now Julie took my parking spot at work, and oh, the printer's jammed again. My boss doesn't see how hard I work. And so, you know what? I'm just going to work an 80-hour week this week and show him I'm the best employee here. And see, you can see there's just so much hyper arousal happening. Okay, and that's our section above the green line. That is going to be where our fight and flight are held. Okay, and so this is just a lot of intensity happening up here. And here's the thing, y'all, we can't live in intensity. It's not sustainable. And so what's going to happen is we're going to live in that intensity. And then when we get home, we just like completely shut down and we eat Oreos and binge Netflix. We're like now down here in hypoarousal, which is going to be more like our freeze response, that dorsal vagal response. And so you can see we've lost our gentle rolling hills. This is a very dysregulated nervous system. And so what I want to offer through this podcast is one, learning how to actually listen to your body enough to know where you are on your window, where you are in your 3 zones. And then each of the weekly podcasts, y'all, are going to give you specific skills. And I'm going to mention this in the podcast. This is a skill for a more hyper aroused state. This is a skill for a more hypo aroused state to help you get back into your green zone, to help you get back into your window, right? And here's the really cool thing, y'all. Okay, so this is like the part that fires me up so much because it feels so hopeful. So the window, the actual window, this is how it varies from like person to person, okay? So if I am a person who has not experienced a lot of trauma, not a lot of chronic stress, like my window is pretty wide. Like, so maybe it looks like that. And so the little bit of activation from someone cutting me off in traffic is not overwhelming. I can deal with it, right? If I am someone who has experienced a lot of trauma or chronic stress, and for those of you who can't see me, I'm pulling my line down quite a bit. Now my window is way more narrow. And so that same experience of being cut off in traffic pushes me outside of my window. Okay. And so I know that probably feels for some of you like, oh, well, that's depressing. Like I probably have a pretty narrow window. What do I do? Well, that's where regulation skills come in. It's so exciting because it does not have to stay that way. The more that you practice the skill of flexibility, like I mentioned in that other podcast about regulation, right? Like I am being flexible between activation and rest. And so the more that you can practice that, the wider your window is going to get. That little bit by little bit. It is changeable. It's so amazing. And I see this happen with clients all the time, right? Like I had literally yesterday, I had a client who, I'm not going to go into the details, but she just shared like this situation that would have been so triggering to me a year ago, I handled with grace. And I was able to have my boundary and I was able to like say what I needed to say and still be okay and not ruminate on it like crazy. And it was just like, we both celebrated together. Like, yes, like this is what being intentional about caring for your nervous system, giving your body what it needs over time will do. It helps the things that were once overwhelming, the things that once pushed you outside of your window. When my window gets larger, the same thing, I'm still okay, right? Does that make sense? It's so exciting. So that is why I care about this so much. It is just the most practical, tangible, and I think beautiful, but I'm emotional about it, way to support growth in your mental health and obviously in your nervous system. So, okay, I got to get back to my notes. I'm just like chatty, Kathy. Okay, yes. So we know why we have a narrow window. We know how we can expand our window. So here's my little practical application ask for today. I would love to invite you guys to just go get a piece of paper and draw a window of tolerance. It doesn't really matter how wide you draw it. Like, let's just get a piece of paper, or you can even print the PDF that I've am putting in the show notes, right? But just draw a window, and I want you to think about when I am feeling really good, like when I am feeling regulated and like I can handle life, what do I notice inside? And so we could say like shoulders down, or we could say breathing calmly. And I want you to just write the sensations in your body that you feel when you are green. And then I want you to think about when you feel really angry or when you feel really anxious, what happens in your body then? And I want you to write that above your green zone. So in that hyper aware place. And then I want you to think about how you feel in your body when you're kind of shut down and overwhelmed and zony. And I want you to write those sensations down here. This is going to be your, the words that are coming up for me, this is going to be your key. You know how like, I'm trying to think like in a pie chart, like when there's like different colors of the pie and then at the bottom it says key and it says like blue equals this, red equals this or whatever. Like that's what I imagine this being for you guys. This is your key. This is what helps you know I'm green, I'm blue, I'm orange. Okay. I think that that is going to be incredibly helpful. And so if you are thinking, well, Christine, like, I don't even know what I feel in my body, so I don't know how to tell you what is in my blue, green, and orange, that's okay. I'd love to invite you to listen to tomorrow's podcast because we are going to be talking all about tracking body sensations. How do we learn to drop in and notice what's happening inside? So you definitely don't want to miss that. If this has been a helpful episode to you, if you think tomorrow's will be helpful to you, I'd love to encourage you to like and subscribe to this podcast or this YouTube channel so that you don't miss any future content. If this is something that has been really interesting to you and you want to dive even deeper, I'd love to invite you to the Somatic Wellness Collective. This is a place where we take these concepts and like pull them way out so that you can really take them in and apply them to your life in a very personalized way. And so I really hope you'll consider joining us there. There's a link in the show notes for that. Remember, your body has innate wisdom. All we have to do is learn how to listen to it. And that's what I'm here for. I'll see you next time.